All right, we're back, and it's COMP213, week 11, lesson 11, part 5. And I believe, yes, it is, part 5. And part 5, we were just finished talking about Google fonts. There's other font sites on the web, and one of them would be Adobe Edge Web Fonts. Adobe Edge Web Fonts is another collection of fonts that are free that you can also download. And it's a really beautiful collection of fonts as well. They come up with, this is the free version, by the way, of WebKit. Okay, so there's actually, WebKit is the professional version that you would pay for. Adobe Edge Web Fonts is one that you don't have to pay for. That is, it's totally free, and you can, if you click the Get Started button, you can again choose from a series of different faces, right? Right, so you can kind of scroll down, or you can look at different things here. Just a moment, please. I'm gonna have to call you back. Okay. Yep, I'm recording. I'm live right now. I gotta go. I'm so sorry. Bye. So like I said, so there's things like, if you want to recommend for headings, you can click that, and then there's some really nice fonts that it'll recommend for some headings, and I apologize for that interruption. So you can also choose for paragraph types. You can search it for paragraph. They have a Source Sans Pro that's really good for paragraph and headings. If it's just paragraphs, it'll be Droid Sans, very, very popular one, or Droid Serif, and there's many other ones. So you can obviously see that there's page 1 of 11 pages. I can go, or this is 1 of 11 fonts. I mean, there's not, again, there's a collection of about, I would say, 500 fonts you have access to. So here's 1 to 12 of 503, and you can go to page 2 and page 3, and you can see many, many different fonts that are really, really cool that you can grab from here. So let's choose one from this setup, right? So if I want to choose this one, let's say Aubrey, right? So I want to select this font, and then just like we did with Google Fonts, which will make this a little larger so you can see, I have some other things I can put in here. Step 1 is verify the fonts and settings. I want this default set. I can put all characters if I want in the font itself, so that includes bullets and everything else. There is a difference here in terms of the way we do things. If you look, I can choose, this is just regular, right? Custom styles, I can choose custom styles or default styles. If I choose default styles, I can make sure that is true as well. But that's only available when I click my default subset. So here's something, if you notice, I'm downloading this script file, right? And this is the first time we've seen a script file, really. We've used other things before, but this script file is a piece of JavaScript, actually, that we can include in our website, right? And then we can use the same kind of thing, font family Aubrey Sans Serif, right? And this would be the one we can use. So if I want to use this font for some stuff, let's use it. We'll use this one as well as the other ones. So we're using Google Web Fonts for some, and we'll use this one for the others. Now this is the challenge. In this particular case, I've got this script tag, right? Here's my script tag. I'm going to grab this thing, and I'm going to copy it. Now, if you notice, this script tag is not a CSS tag, and I can't include this in my CSS just like I did. The beauty of using web fonts like Google is I can include it in my CSS. Here I cannot. All right, so this one I'd have to do per page, right? Which is also more of a complex use. I don't want to mix my CSS, as an example, with my JavaScript, right? And if I want to include JavaScript, there's 2 places to include it, and this is just a very, very high-level overview of where to include my JavaScript tag. Again, it's a script tag, which means some code is going to be executed when I hit this particular link here. So I'm going to put a new section. Let's put a new section here that I'm going to make a comment for, and I'm going to call this my JavaScript section. Right? Again, JavaScript. We're not talking about how to use it right now. We're going to consume it, but we're not going to program in JavaScript, right? And in here, underneath here, we're going to kind of paste our JavaScript tag, our script tag up here, which basically says, go to this website and kick off this particular, use this font And what I want to use is this JavaScript library, right? So this Aubrey N4 all JS, that's what's going to be included. Okay, cool. So I've added that in. Now that's all only added to my index.html. I've got several pages here. So let's say, for example, I want not only my index.html, but my dashboard and my contact to be used in those. I have to include those in there as well. So I'm going to take these two links, there's two lines, line 13 and 14, and I'm going to go into my contact page, line 13 and 14, and include that in there. And I'm also going to do the same thing for and save it, right? I'm also going to do the same thing for my dashboard, and here's line 13 and 14, and save that. So now I've got those in those pages. Now remember, every page I use them, I got to include a link. So you can see the disadvantage here, right? Let's go back to my page to see what the other steps are. So this is step 1, what your settings are going to be. And step 2, for the JavaScript, I put this in the head of my document. That's what it says. This is important to read this in the head of my document. There's other places you can put this JavaScript, not in this case. Okay, and then the next piece is taking this font family, Aubrey Sans Serif. So I want to use this Aubrey Sans Serif font, which is kind of a weird looking font. Look at the A, right? I want to use that instead of my other script, right? So let's go back in here, and I'm going to go back into my main CSS. And you know what? Instead of my H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and 6 using ND Flower cursive, I want to use my Aubrey font. So I'm going to replace this with, oops, not JavaScript. I want to replace it, and sorry, that's just a copy paste error. That's just with Aubrey Sans Serif, right? So that's what I'm going to be using, Aubrey Sans Serif. So let's see if I get that happening now in all of my pages. So I've got two things going on. I've got my Google fonts up here, and I've got my Aubrey Sans, which is coming from my WebKit, which is actually from Edge Web Fonts from Adobe, right? Two different companies that produce fonts. And I'm gonna kind of play this out and see what happens. See if I get what I'm looking for. I got to refresh sometimes because just to make sure. And there it is. So there's my forms example. See the different font there, right? So I got this font here, and let's see if it works on my dashboard. So click dashboard, and again I'd have to refresh, right, to see that happens, right? Because now remember, it remembers where I was. Here's my contact page. I'm going to refresh my contact page. If I don't refresh, what happens is we have our pages cached on the browser memory, right? So we want to refresh our page to make sure that we get the right look. Again, I'm not really totally happy with this font. I'm just showing you as an example of what the font could look like. And I've just chosen a random font. Now, obviously, what it says here is, you know, from a use perspective, right? It's got a regular use case. I'm using it with a certain strength. Let me just go down here. If I really want to be effective with WebKit, again, I highly recommend using these two things here. If I want heading fonts, heading style fonts, I want to choose heading, right? And if you notice, there's different properties here, right? Like, for example, if I want a heavy weight, or I want a regular weight, or if I want a lightweight, I can also filter by that too. So let's say I want a regular weight. So now I see how it filters more, right? Now I've only got 9 fonts that has just a regular weight, right? There's also, I can also filter by height, X height. X height actually gives me how high the actual font is, the letters, right? That's another indicator of font type, font styling. Uppercase and lowercase, I can choose uppercase and lowercase. I can choose also condensed width, or extended width, or regular width. Only regular width fonts, let's say. I only want those, right? So I don't want extended fonts. There's only 18 of those, 18 of these ones, right? Only extended width fonts. And also, if you notice, there's lining figures, right, and old style figures, two different ways of doing things. Which ones? How do I want my figures? Which are my, when I say figures, they're actually my my numbers. How do they look like? Right, what do they look like? Other language support for different kinds of languages. So I want Spanish or Italian or Portuguese support. There's quite a few. In the professional version, there's many, many more, right? And if I go to also this piece, if you notice, there's low contrast, regular contrast, and high contrast. Sometimes we want to use high contrast fonts for people who have visibility issues and so on. Just bear with me, guys. Just got to answer one thing. And so I have some options here, and one thing I want to do, so I want to choose a better heading than that one I just chose, right? So I want to go to something that makes more sense to me. So I'm going headings as an example, and there's only 20 because I made some selections. If I want to reset things back to normal, again, I could simply deselect or select. I should have a much broader selection than just these 20 if I deselect the headings. If I select headings, deselect headings, I have 500 fonts I could choose that are not recommended for headings, other ones, right? So let's choose just ones that are recommended for headings. I have 20 different ones. I'm showing you 12 of them. Let's look at other ones that might be a little better for headings. PTS narrow, not really a fan of that one. Source sans looks very much like we already have with Open Sans, but not quite as bold. And maybe I want to use League, Gothic, or Passion 1, so something more bold, or Paytone 1. Paytone 1 is actually a very interesting font. I'm not recommending it to mix with the fonts that I have, but let's use something that's more suited for headings. So I'll use this one. So again, I'm going to select this font. I've got this one font here, Aubrey, and Paytone 1. Let's just remove Aubrey. So I'm only going to use Paytone. I want all my characters, which is going to basically allow me to change my JavaScript file. So here's a change that I'm making. So I'm copying this one here. So Control C, going over to my file here. I'm going to go back to my index.html first, and just replace this line here with what I just copied for Paytone 1. If I want more than one, it'll give me a line that has more than one. Right now I'm only selecting one at a time, right? And what I want to do is grab this script and copy it into my other pages. This is the problem, right? Because I only have each page is going to have my scripts, right? So here's Paytone 1. If I don't do that, and this is where there's the danger, right? And this is one way of doing it. There's other ways as well. If you're using templating, it's easier. Okay, so again, I've got my edge fonts, Paytone 1. I've got to change my main CSS now so that instead of font family Aubrey sans serif, it's using Paytone. And of course, it's another sans serif type font, which nicely works with my Open Sans. It's already sans serif. And who remembers what sans serif stands for? Oop. Anyone know why it's called sans serif? Sorry? There's like flourishes that have fonts have flourishes, right? Like for example, little curves or little edges, little ears, if you will, right? And the ones that don't have the little ears that stick out at different places, those are sans serif. Without the ears. Sans means without in French. Without ears, without those little curves or edges or whatever. It's it's a different kind of font like this one. Okay, let's see what this looks like now. I've changed my fonts. I'm going to refresh my pages. I'm going to go back to here and just kill these ones. And I'm just going to refresh just my page, and automatically you can notice that this is a nicer, it might go better with this one. Still, there's a bit of a clash. Not really a fan of two different styles here. If I go to dashboard, again I see that this has changed and this has changed. So you see that the fonts have changed, right? So again, web fonts, they don't exist on our system, but we have web fonts. Okay, and this doesn't look bad, this copyright here. Again, you might want to use something like this example form if you want to add additional style to your page, right? Okay, so we've covered Google fonts, and we've covered Edge fonts, right? Which is from Adobe. Let's go back down here for my tools. I'm going to go to fonts and colors. There's really a couple ones I have to show you one. One of them is this one called Font Squirrel. So let's say you want to use I want to use my own fonts. I have something that I want to use that I want to share with somebody else. Yes.
So if somebody has a JavaScript disabled, what is output in that?
Sorry?
If the JavaScript is disabled, the browser.
Then it won't work.
So what will be the appearance of the?
It'll drop back. The default back will be where you put it. If you notice, if in our fonts, if JavaScript is disabled in the browser, that's a good question actually. Then see how it says the name of the font and then plus the fallback, which is sans serif. Sans serif exists in all browsers. Everyone has that, right? So that means worst case, if you can't get this, then you're going to get this. right? That's what it is. So if you notice, this is all sans serif type fonts. Paytone 1 and Open Sans, it's a sans serif font. I don't like Paytone 1, I'll be honest with you. I don't like it. I don't think I like it with my style. I want to stick with my Google font, right? Let's go back to my index and my dashboard and get rid of those things. I want to use my Edge fonts right now. I don't want to use my JavaScript. I want to show it to you. Actually, I'll leave my JavaScript section in there. We might put something else in there in a second. But let's get rid of this. And I'm going to do the same thing with my dashboard, right? Oops. Get rid of my dashboard here and my contact, because I think it's important for me to try and clean this up a little bit. Okay, so I've kind of got rid of that. I'm going to go back to my main.css, and I want to change my font family back to the way it was before, which I'm going to use open. I'm going to be very specific with my heading tags for now. I'll make them the same. We might change this later on. So they're back to Open Sans, and let's just run it to make sure that that change took effect, because I want to make sure that it's Open Sans 400. Right, so there we go. That's a nicer looking font. And if I want to make it so that it's bold, like this one, I could certainly do that. But you see how nice and beautiful it is. And by the way, Open Sans, like I said, is like a very popular web font right now, especially from if you're using Bootstrap, they use an Open Sans. Okay, so that's one of them. We can certainly use that one. But let's say I have a web font, a font that I like. That's mine. I own it. I have the rights to it, and I want to use it. And it's not on Google Fonts, and it's not on WebKit or Adobe Edge. But I want to use a font that you feel like you want to use. What do you do, right? In fact, let's look at a couple of artifacts that we can look at and see which ones I want to use. So I have a font that I downloaded. I think I may have downloaded it for another course, or maybe we can find a font that's out there that's interesting. I'm trying to think of where I can show it to you that's easier. And I think I have a font that I've used in one of my other courses, COMP213, and I think I used it for something called Starbase 12. All right, let's take a look at this Starbase 12 font. If this is just a game that I made, and the game itself has a different font, so I'm going to go into Assets. Here's Fonts. And you know what? I have I'm just going to pull this up for you right now. I have a font that's a TrueType font that's a Star Trek font, if you're a Star Trek fan. So I'm going to take the Star Trek font, copy it, and I'm going to go to my downloads, and I'm going to paste it, right? So there it is, Star Trek.ttf, right? And you know what? I'm going to go back to the Mac side for a second, and I'm going to go to Downloads. And if you notice, my Star Trek font, which is Star Trek.ttf, is right here. Right? So there's my Star Trek.ttf. Okay. So I've got my TrueType font. That's what it is. And TrueType fonts exist on everywhere, on Windows machines and whatever. It's a font style that you own. Maybe you bought it from somewhere, or maybe it's a free font that you downloaded from the web. There's lots of TrueType fonts that are free that you can also download. But you want to use that one in your pages as opposed to the ones that are standard that exist on Google Web Fonts or even in your system. Or maybe it's in your system but doesn't exist on everybody else's system, and you want that font for whatever reason, right? Because you've designed your pages with that font, whatever, and you want that font. Okay, well, this is another way to do it. I can go to Google, Font Squirrel, which is a very popular font generator service, right? Again, it's free. I can upload my fonts, right? So I'm going to choose where I'm going to get them from. So I'm going to go to my downloads, where I put it, and I'm going to go to my Star Trek TTF, and I'm going to click Open. And when I do that, oh, see, it's already a web font. Please only run original OTF and TTF fonts. I didn't know that was a web font. Haha, that's new. But Star Trek TTF is a web font. And that's what Font Squirrel does. Let's grab one that's not. I'm going to just find a random font that I don't have as a web font. So I'm going to say, I want to, TrueType fonts, free TrueType fonts, just something else. And then what Font Squirrel allows you to do, I'm just going to go to Fonts 101 here. That's good. Here, I'll use this one, Montserrama, right? Or something like that, or the latest ones, right? Bad Guy Black. This one's a different kind of font, right? So let's go to this one and just download Bad Guy Black. Let's see if that one is allowed. And I think we can just download this for free. Again, this is just a free service. I'm gonna have this bad guy black here in my zip file under my downloads. Here we go, and I'm just choosing one randomly. And under this one, it has all of them. But let's say I don't. Let's say I only have my true type font. This one here, bad guy black. And let's use font scroll again. So I'll go back to font scroll, upload fonts, and I'm going to go to bad guy black and grab my true type font and press open. Hopefully this one isn't part of it. There it is. Okay, so this is what it does. So font scroll takes the font. It's still generating. Okay, that's good. And I say it's optimal, right? And I make an agreement that yes, I'm uploading it and it's legal and eligible for web embedding because you know what? I have a font. It comes from a free site or whatever. And then I can say download my kit. Now watch this. I download my kit, and what it does, it packages together bad guy black regular, right? And this will be a neat little font that I can add in, right? And when it's done, right, it'll allow me to, if you notice, it's 55% done. It takes a bit of time for it to do it because it actually composes not just the true type font version, but all the other types of versions too. The WAF, there's all these other kind of font styles. And there's right now for this bad guy black regular, there's 218 glyphs. A glyph is like a letter or a character. And so there's quite a few glyphs that it generates. And if you notice, it's just taking its time to generate this. Again, it's not a free online service, so you can't expect it to be super awesome. But it is. For me, font scroll, I've used it lots of times. Definitely something you can upload if you want to grab some fonts here. I'll let it do its business and talk about one other service until it finishes. We're going to go to another one called Font Awesome. All right. So if I go to Font Awesome, if I want to look for it, sometimes what we want to do, especially when we're designing the web, is I want to grab icons, right, to put along with my with everything else I've got, right? Now, if you notice, it says the iconic font and CSS toolkit, right? Well, that's what this does. It allows us to download and install Font Awesome here. So if I go to download, let's go click download. It actually says, hey, you know what? I hope you love Font Awesome. It's free. This guy, Dave Gandy, he's the author of Font Awesome, right? It's a kind of a free and open source thing. I can click download, and what it's going to do is going to give me the Font Awesome 4.3 version of the library, right? If I want to check out my font icons, by the way, if I want to see what they look like, font icons is another place to go. There's a bunch of them that look really, really nice. Another site. But Font Awesome, let me just click out of here for a second. If I want to look at icons that that exist, these are all the ones that you're going to get with the library. Take a look. So I want to make a font that adjusts or anchor or an archive. There it is. There's my web font kit from Font Scroll. Finally finished. Right? Let me just save that one. We'll get back to that in a second. So this is what Font Awesome allows you to do. It gives you all these awesome icon fonts. We're going to get back here and use some of these to create our fonts for our home button and so on. And I'll talk about how we do that. But for now, let's get back to this, what we did. So I downloaded Font Squirrel. It finished. I got my font kit. Here it is. Right? And my font kit, if I want to look at the folder that it comes with, let's take a look. I have got this bad guy black, and I got all these font characters here, right? I got some specimen files. It even comes with a style sheet. It even generated its own style sheet, a CSS. Let's take a look and see what this style sheet looks like. So I'm going to go into, I'll open up my style sheet in brackets, just so you can see what it looks like. Here's my style sheet. Look, take a look what this does. It's using another @ kind of command, and this is a directive that we can use in CSS. But it's using something called @fontface. It's another way to do fonts, right? And what I'm doing here is I'm specifying the font family as bad guy black regular, and it's also is targeting the source for all these fonts as bad guy black regular. So it basically is assuming that you're going to put everything in the same folder as your CSS. That's what's happening. So if you want to be in a different folder, then you've got to redirect this font so it appears somewhere else. But it does give you a really good specimen of what it looks like. Okay, that's our folder. And here's our an example of our page. Here's our demo page. It even gives you a demo HTML page to look at. So I double click on the demo page, and it gives us what bad guy black is going to look like. This is what my font is going to look like, which is pretty awesome font, right? That I just kind of found randomly on the web, right? And I want this for my headings. That's a really cool heading font, which is totally different than what I've used before. It's not a sans serif font, it's a sans font for sure. Sorry, it's a serif font for sure, right? Because it has these serifs, these little ears here and here. And it looks very old school, right? And it shows you what it looks like in paragraphs as well as headings. A big specimen sheet, that's all it does. And you can actually look at the sample layout. This is what it would look like if you wanted to two-color layout. It also gives you glyphs and languages for how it would look with different glyph chart. And then here's how you install it. It even gives you an installation guide for how to install the font family, like 1, 2, 3 on how to do it, right? Whatever the web font would be. Then you can modify your own style sheet and add it in, your font family, whatever the web font is, and you can test it out. So kind of a little sheet on how to make this all work. Really, really kind of cool. Let's make it work for us. So first thing is we're going to go back to this bad guy black stuff right here. I need to kind of embed all of these things inside my web design somehow. Let's do that. And now the good thing is it's going to be installed in on my CSS document, so it'll cascade down to the other pages, so I don't have to do this more than once. Okay, let's take a look at this. I'm going to go to Downloads, and I've got my web font toolkit, right? And I've got, just to make it simple, I've got all this stuff right here, and I'm going to go into Visual Studio here, and I'm going to stop debugging, because I got to do this when I stop debugging. And if you notice, I have my content and I have my CSS. The dirty way to do it would be to drag and drop everything in there. And I think I'd like to try that for now from a timing perspective. Let's see how this works. So I'm going to grab all this stuff, the EOT. It's the same name, right? Bad Guy Black. And there's different versions of it. I've got to grab all these versions right here because they will work in different browsers. Just to support different browser support, I grab all these ones, and I'm going to drag them into my content folder, right? Now the only way I can do this is if I'm not debugging, right? So that's the first thing I got to show you. So I can't drag and drop into my content folder if I'm debugging. That's the first thing. All right, so let's do that. So let's drag and drop. And if I can't, if you notice it says, hey, I can't grab this stuff. How come? How about this one? Can I grab this one? That works, but I can't include all this stuff in my content folder. It actually gives me an X. How about an HTML? I can't put HTML anywhere either. Hey, what's going on? How come I can't drag and drop anything anywhere? Well, funny thing is that sometimes what Visual Studio has a funny thing to do. They're asking you to add it in a different way. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to go add as an example, and I'm going to go existing item or new item, right? If I go to existing item, right, this is going to copy all this stuff that I want. So I'm going to go downloads. I'm going to go to Bad Guy Black, which is where I have everything. I'm going to grab all the stuff that I want, which is all this stuff, right? So I'm going to kind of grab all these things, and don't crap out on me, man. Don't crap out. There we go. So it was going to crap out on me for something. So I got all these things. There we go. These 4 different things here, right? And it's going to go, I'm hoping this all is going to go inside my document, right? So I'm going to go add, and then they get added in here. There's my content, right? So you see I've got my GIF, these 2 GIF converted, the OTF and the TTF. What happened to the other ones? Look, I have my WAF. That's not going in there, right? My WAF files and my WAF2, right? Well, content for Microsoft is a specific place that has things for CSS, and it doesn't understand what WAF and WAF2 is, right, in this particular context. Let's drag the rest of the stuff in there. Let's look at our style sheet in here in what we're looking at. So if I notice I've got WAF2 and WAF, having a problem loading those in, but I definitely have this other stuff with font weight normal and font style normal. I've got that in my at font face. So I've got to take all this at font face stuff as is. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to go into my main.css. It's got to be way at the top after my at import, right? And I got to put it in there as at font face. There it is, at font face. Now I haven't used it yet. I've just mentioned what it is, right? And if you notice, these URLs EOT doesn't exist in there. OTF does. But it's almost like I got to create my own little area that I can hold my fonts. And the way to do that is to make a new folder. Running out of time here, but I want to try and do this. A new folder that I'm going to call Assets. And inside my Assets, I want to put in a new folder again, right, that I want to call Fonts. Right, so this is my font assets, right? And what I want to do is I want to move these things, and plus add new ones, from here into my fonts. And I can do that by just dragging and dropping. So that's one thing I've done, okay? The other thing I can do is now, let's see if I can drag the rest of these things in there. Let's see if I can drag my WAF and my EOT. In fact, let's see if I can overwrite the stuff and drag it into my fonts folder by just dragging and dropping. And if you notice, it still doesn't allow me to do that. I still can't drag and drop the ones it doesn't know. Like it doesn't know, Visual Studio doesn't know anything about EOT files, right? So it's not going to allow me to drag and drop an EOT file. What if, and here's the question I have for you, what if I added this in a different way? Like for example, I added it in as I went to the folder and I dragged and dropped it in there, right? I could do that too. The challenge that I'm having right now is that Visual Studio doesn't know what these font faces are. It knows the TTF, it knows the OTF, it knows the GIF fonts, but it doesn't understand the EOT, even the SVG. Let's see if the SVG works, right? Doesn't know what the SVG is, that kind of document. From a drag and drop perspective, it doesn't understand that. So it's not going to allow it. If I go into fonts and go add, and I go existing item, and I tried the same thing, if you notice, it says all files, but the things it doesn't show me, even in all files, even though I'm looking at the folder, it's not showing me files that are incompatible with what I can put in, right? Just showing you this. Okay, so that's one thing. So what do I do if I've got a problem like this? I can't drag and drop, I can't put my folder in there, and whatever, but I want to point at these things anyway. Well, I could point at my folder, and I know my folder, this COMP213 lesson 10 part 1, which is what I'm looking at right now. It exists inside my library, right? So here's my sandbox. Actually, I'm going to open up another file folder for a second. I'm just showing you different things, guys. Like, if you guys choose not to use this stuff, I'm not going to force you to use web fonts, but I want you to know what they are. All right. So here's my my library. I'm going to go to my sandbox, and I'm going to go to COMP213 lesson 10 part 1, which is right here. And inside there, if I kind of barrel down in here, I see that there's a content folder, and is that the right one? Content part 1. So I want to make sure that I'm hitting the right one, or else this would be very bad. I don't see that there is an assets folder here, which is a bad thing, because otherwise it should appear, right? So let's just make sure. Yeah, it shows that, and let's see where it is. It shows me where it's pointing. Let's go File, Save As, or Save All, and if I go to Recent Files, COMP213 comp main. Yeah, it should be there. That's the funny thing. I'm not sure why it's doing that. And bear with me while I struggle to go to. Let me. What if it's 1A? Maybe I put it in the wrong one. Nope, it's not 1A. One more time. And bear with me as I go to 1B. Nope. I can tell because this is another folder. That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking for the assets folder that I just made. Right, and let's go to 11 part 1. Yep, this is the one. So here's my asset folder, and here's fonts. Right, and here's the ones that I have, but I don't have the other ones. So what if I add the other ones in anyway? This is what I was saying. So if I go here, and if I go to add them in anyway, right, if I drag and drop EOT, so I want to copy and paste this one, copy and paste. I can do this on the folder level, right? It doesn't know what they are on the other side. Here's the SVG. I need that one. Copy and paste. And here are the two WAF files, right? Which is important too. Copy and paste. So I've got all those in there now, but it's not being viewed by the browser. Well, let me show you what that does. So you still don't see them there, right? If I refresh, I still don't see them. But if I use this folder, which shows all files, there they are. So they're actually physically in the folder. Visual Studio doesn't recognize them as fonts or files you can work with. That's the only thing. So let's say I want to target this, one of the files, this TrueType font, and I want to target this as a URL. So what if I just start typing again? So if I start typing it in, and I go, well, it's got to be up one, right? So here's up one from where I am, and I want to go to Assets, and I want to go to Fonts. Look what it's doing. Visual Studio is giving me the code for it, and there's my black guy TTF, bad guy black TTF. It's actually giving me, right, my my code for it. So I'm going to grab this thing for a second. Bear with me. So I've got my code, right, and I'm going to undo everything for a second, right? So undo, 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 and I don't want to mess this up, right? But I've got this, and now I can just put in here. I know the pathing is correct by putting in. I'm just going to kill this. I need this format TrueType for a second, but I want to redo the URL. So I said URL, and then again I go in brackets, right? I want to find my assets, my fonts, and I want to find this one, right? There it is. And if you notice for this style, this is the trick to it all, right? Just to show you what this way is of doing things is, I need this piece here, which is the path to my fonts, which is right here. Now, if you notice, there's a couple of things here, right? If I don't find the right pathing, let me just try to show you this out here. So here's this one and this one. I've got to replace the path for all these ones because now I've placed my fonts in a different folder, right? Otherwise, my computer won't know how to get there, okay? Or the website won't know how to go and get these fonts. So I've pointed my fonts, the URL, the location for my fonts inside my font folder. That's what I'm doing here. Okay, I'm going to save that. So this is the first piece. The second piece is I've got to use my font. If I look at my my CSS, my style sheet here, right? So one of the things that it tells me is I've got to use my, that's the wrong thing. One of the things is I've got to use my font family. The other one is I've got to call it up where I need it, right? So let's take a look at that. If I go to my style sheet again and I open this up with brackets, here's my brackets, right? It's showing me this at font face. That's one thing I need to do, right? That's what I kind of came up with. But if you notice, from a usage perspective, if I go into my example, my demo that comes up, and if I go to installing web fonts, it says that I got to do this font family, whatever the web font name is, and then my fallback, which is Arial sans serif. Just in case that web font somehow it doesn't work, I want this font family and the name of the web font in brackets to be used. I'm going to copy this, go over here, and by the way, if you want a specific example, the other thing to do is to look at the example that's in here, which is, remember, we have a CSS style sheet already that we're using. So if I go to my specimen files, there's actually a style sheet that's in here, specimen.css. Let's load this one up. Remember, we have a little example that they gave us, right? Let's load that one up. And if you notice for this one, it actually has the @import being used. So it actually uses that particular font in different places. So font bold, whatever, Arial. But if I want to use that particular font, it actually calls upon that that other font body, right? And then it uses it in here as well. So I could simply use this one if I wanted to, but I'm just going to take a look and see where it says. Here's my font image. I'm going to make sure I can grab the right stuff here. Yeah, not really totally happy with this one, this little style sheet. Just give me a second. More or less, I have the formula. This is the formula right here. Font family and the web font and plus whatever fallback you want. Okay, so I'm going to use that for my heading. So I'm going to go in here, and instead of open sans, I'm going to use my new font name, right? My new font name is Bad Guy Black Regular, this one. That's my new font name. So I'm going to use this one up here, copy this, and go in here where it says open, instead of open sans for my H1 tags, and put that in there, right? And I'm going to put my font weight as normal. because I don't want to go into give it a font weight of 400. I'm just going to put a normal font weight. Okay, cool. So there's my font. I've got it in there. Whew, that took a long time. Let's try this out. If I've done it all correctly, it's not going to error out, and there you go. What do you think? So there's bad guy black. So that's from a font that's physically on my system, that if you were to go see, if you don't have this, your browser would go there then and download the glyphs from my server, wherever I house my server. You would download it into your browser, and then you could produce the fonts this way. It would render the fonts, no matter what they are. If you don't have them, you can use Font Squirrel as a service. Okay, we're running out of time. I only have maybe a few more minutes before people rush me out of here. But let's do one more example before we go, and that's this Font Awesome stuff. Okay, so here I've got Font Awesome. I want to download it, right, as an example. And I'm going to go back where it says, go back to Font Awesome. And I want to click Download. When I download, I get the latest version of Font Awesome. So I can do it this way, right? Or, remember, Dave Gandy makes it. I could do here and download, or I could use Visual Studio to do it for me. How do I do that? I'm going to stop debugging, and over here where I have my my stuff, I have my assets now. I'm going to right-click. Take a look here. I'm going to right-click on this thing here, right on my project, and I'm going to go down here where it says Manage Nuget Packages. When I click this, I'm going to search for. You can search for many different kinds of packages. This is the new package manager actually allows you to extend Visual Studio for web development, right? So I want to add in Font Awesome. So I'm going to go Font Awesome. I want to see if I can find that. And if I can't, it's going to be Font. Here's Font Awesome, right? And if you notice, Dave Gandy made this, but this one was last published 8/29/2014. I don't want to use that one. And here's Dave Gandy, the same guy who made this, but he made, this is version 4.3, and it was produced January 24th, 2015. That's the latest version. So I'm going to install this by clicking Install. If I do this, it actually adds the Font Awesome library into my files. So let's take a look at that. So I've got content, and inside my content, I've got some fonts now. There's Font Awesome, right? Hey, let's take a look. How come my EOT and my SVG, my TTF and my WAF, how come it worked here with my Font Awesome inside my content folder, but not when I dragged and dropped? Because it doesn't know about those things unless you actually specifically say what they are. Okay, and that's the short formula. So I've got the library, but now I need to use the library. How do I use Font Awesome? I've got them here, but I want to use it, and that's the first piece of it. If I was to go and download it, let's see what I get with my download package. So let's just download this, and it's going to be into Font Awesome 4.3. Let's see what I get when I get my download package, if I get the whole thing. Okay, I'm going to open the download package up, and inside my Font Awesome I have some CSS. Here's my CSS, right? And I got my special CSS, and take a look. I need to use these CSS packages in my own browser, right? It also gives me my fonts. I need these too. So I need this and I need this. It also has less and SCSS, which we're going to talk about later on in the course. All right, so I've got the same packages. Here's my CSS. Here's Font Awesome. I don't want to use this one. I want to use the minified version of my CSS, right? Always. So I'm going to go back to my index.html. And this is where I'd have to put in an extra CSS sheet again into every document that I want to access Font Awesome, right? I'm going to put this in again. Probably before my main.css, so I have access to it. And I'm going to drag and drop this min.css in there, like this. That's one thing. I'm going to take the same way of doing this. I'm going to copy this one. And I'm going to go to each of my sheets, my dashboard, and I'm going to go into my contacts, and I'm going to save all. That's one. And now I need to understand how to use them. I want to put an icon, a home icon, next to my home link, right, in my icon, in my navbar, right? How do I do that? Well, now I go back to the documentation, right? And on here, for how to do this, as an example, if I go to getting started, right, if I look down here, it tells me what I need to do. Number one, paste the link, which I've done, right? By the way, here's the link for it on the CDN. So if you don't have to download it and have it part of your web, you can actually use the CDN. What's a CDN? Does anyone know what CDN is? The Content Delivery Network, And you might say, hold on, if the web is down, then I won't have access to my icons. Yeah, you're right, if the web is down, right? That's not going to happen anytime soon. So don't worry about that. Pat yourself on the back. You got scalable graphics, blah, blah, blah. Check out the examples to start using Font Awesome. So let's go to examples. Here's some examples. And I want to use this thing. I have a class that I get. I can use the I tag, to and using a span to put in my or using a span either way. So here's my I tag with a special class that I can call upon, right, to show the type of font. So I want FA, which is Font Awesome, the font name, FA Camera Retro as an example, and the size of my font, and I want to put that and surround whatever I want to surround with inside my font, right? So let's say I want to put this next to my home. I'm going to search for a home button and do the same thing. And there's, by the way, there's all kinds of awesome examples here of what it looks like. This is the best part, guys. So let's look at icons, and I want to search for, as an example, I want to search for some icons. So I want to search for anything that says home on it, right? Well, there's a couple of icons here. There's this home button. That's neat. What does it do? Well, here's an example of how to use it. Look, I class FA home. I'm going to take this thing here, copy it, right? And I'm going to go into my code, and go into where my home link is, which is here, my home. And inside my href, next to my home button, I'm going to put that in. So I'm going to go paste. Right? And you know what? If I want this home link to be in here, if you notice this is just, there's nothing in here, right? I don't have to, I'll just leave it the way it is and see what it does for my home page, just for my index or my contact.html. So I'm going to take the same link, this one here, I'm going to copy it next to my home every time. So my home button has an icon next to it. You know what? Just to give it a little space, I'm going to put a space in there as well, because that's important. So I'm going to take this whole thing, copy it in, and go to my index.html, and each of my nav bars is going to have that one in there instead of just home. Right, there it is. And I'll go to my dashboard and do the same thing here. And you might say this is a lot of work, but you know what? This is how you make pages look. This is stuff is what gives you superpowers, man. It makes you look even better than normal. Let's take a look. I run this thing and bam, I got a little home icon. Right? And let me just refresh the whole page. And I'm going to just make it so that it's regular size. So you can see right now it's really big, so I wanted to make it so you can see everything. Right? So there's what it would look like in 100%. So here's 100%. So I've got my little home button, right? And if you notice, I've got my forms using this crazy stuff that I asked for. It's really huge. Not working out. I don't like it. But I wanted to show you how it can be done. And then here's my home, right? This is my form example. It is here. And what about if is it responsive? Hell yeah. Right? It's there too. Right? So because it's a SVG type font, it's a scalable vector graphic. So when you scale down your website and when you go responsive, you see this little home link, this home icon there as well, right? So again, really, really cool stuff. And if I want to make this, if I think this is too small, so I think this home button is too small, and bear with me guys for 2 more minutes before you run away to show you this part. If instead of making this, I want to make this bigger, how do I do that? Well, here's some examples of how to make it larger, right? If you notice there's, small, all the way to really large, right? Well, how do I do that? Well, if I don't remember what the code is, because this has been included in my min.css, right? I have access to it here. So if I go, I know FA home what it is. But what if I want to make it so if I type FA, it gives me some code hinting right away because that's been included. I can make it 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, right? Let's go FA 2 times. Let's see what that looks like. So twice as large. And I want to put this same code after my home. This is a new class that I'm using, right? I'm going to go to that's my dashboard. I want to go to my contact, put that in there as well. And I want to go to my index.html. If you notice, I got to put that as well. So when you test it, you want to test it on one page and copy it to the other pages, right? And then refresh everything and see what that looks. That's a little better, a little bigger, right? So that's 2 times. And maybe I need another space in there so I can go in there and space it a little bit differently for my font and so on. But again, really cool thing. Highly recommend if you're going to use font icons on your site, which is a very popular thing to do these days because of the way mobile is working. that you use Font Awesome, which is the default de facto font library that we use when we use Bootstrap. See how nice it looks now? And other font libraries. And that's really it for me for this session, right? We've done a bunch of different ones. But this is the one that I wanted to kind of hit. We kind of hit web fonts. We kind of talked about Google in one part. We did also, the WebKit one, which is, and it's the Adobe web fonts that we also talked about. We talked about Font Squirrel, which is a font converter if you wanted to use one of your own fonts, right? And we also finally did Font Awesome for icons. And why am I spending so much time on fonts? Because I'm going to test you on it, guys. That's why. I'm going to test you on fonts, right? So you need to know about fonts. And the reason for this is because fonts and type, when you look at typefaces on the web, is one of the things that make websites different. That make websites either awesome or make websites suck, right? One of the two. So you want to understand how to get some really cool fonts out there. And I've given you the tools on how to do this now. All right, that's it for me. See you next week.